Hey friends, and welcome to Building an Application with Angular and Firebase. My name is Mark Thompson. I'm on the Angular team here at Google, and I'll be your workshop host with the most for this session. But we're not alone. Let's take a look at the slides so that we can see the incredible teaching assistant squad. All right, meet Emma, Minko, Alex, Pete, and Keen. So they're going to be here with us to help support you as we build our application. Now, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A functionality for this workshop. Let's have a look at the requirements. You're going to need the Angular CLI. Well, you're going to need Node and the Angular CLI. You're also going to need a code editor, a Google account, and a basic understanding of Angular. All right, so to get the most out of our time together, we're going to focus on the major parts of the functionality. But if you need more time to look at the code, well, this workshop is based on a code lab, and that's what we'll be using. So here's what you should do. Head over to this URL, goo.gle/io-angular-workshop if you still need to get access to the code lab. But it should have already been linked in this section. Okay, friends, let's head over to the code and create our project. Now, this is our development environment. I'm using Visual Studio Code with Angular Language Service already installed. Now, I know it looks really cool, but you too can have this nifty tool by going to the Extensions tab in VS Code and searching for the Angular Language Service. On the right-hand side of my screen, I have all of our steps outlined. In each step, it'll tell us where the code lab is, what step we're on in the code lab, and it'll have an additional resource link with the completed code for a section if you need it. Okay, friends, let's get started. First thing we need to do is create a new project. Here's the command that we're going to be using. Wherever you're going to create your project, I want you to go to a terminal window and type ng new kanban-fire and use the strict flag. This is going to install Angular for us and it's going to create a new project for us. All right, would you like to add Angular routing? This application doesn't need it, so we'll say no. Then which style sheet format should you use? Well, we're going to go with CSS. Now, while this is installing, let's have a look at our application that we'll be building today. Okay, friends. Now, this is Kanban-fire. This is our version of a Kanban-style productivity board. It'll have swim lanes where we can move our tasks from backlog, in progress, and to done. Now, to make this look great, we're going to actually be using something very special, which we'll use in the next step. Now, if you're at home watching, remember, we're on the Code Lab Step 1, so you can find these directions in more detail there if you need it. All right, we're almost done installing our package. Now, I'll talk a little bit more about the Kanban-fire app. Our backlog is our to-do list. Then our in progress are things we're currently working on, and our done is where we'll go when we're finished. All right, we're just going to give it a little bit of time to go ahead and finish installing, and I'm sure that yours are still installing right now. So as soon as it's finished, it'll say package installed successfully. All right, friends, here's what we'll do next. Let's actually view the application that's built by default in Angular. So to view your project, we're going to use this command. We'll go into the project that we just created, and then we'll do ng-serve. I'll do that now. Okay, so ng-serve creates a local, it starts up a local development server. Now, this server is not suitable for production. It's really only good for development. All right. Once our development server is started, we'll be able to find our application on port 4200. Now let's go back to our task list while this is starting up. We've already completed our introduction. Now we're on Code Lab Step 2, where we've created our project, and now we're just going to start it and serve it. If you have any questions during this workshop, definitely use our incredible teaching assistant team. All right, you can find those folks in the Q&A section. They'll be able to answer questions, and then we'll be able to go from there. All right, things are ramping up pretty quickly. Very, very cool. All right, friends, it looks like our development server is started and it's ready. I'm just going to jump over and reload the application. Okay, this is the default app that gets started with Angular. So if we've gotten this far, that means our application is working. I have something for you. I need you to get that hand up right now, wherever you are, your left or right hand. Here's what I got for you. That's a high five for me to you because you are doing amazing. All right, friends, so we have our project created. Let's keep this show going. The next step we'll want to do is add material. Let's look at the command to add material design to our project. I'm going to open another terminal window. That way I can keep this one running. Then I go into my Kanban file folder. And then I'm going to do ng add at Angular /material. And while this is running, there's one other step that I want to mention that we can do. Let's go ahead and make sure we open our code in Visual Studio Code. So our project is not open yet in our code editor. I'm going to do that step now. So for me, I'm just going to add it to my workspace. Now you can go File, Open, and add it to yours. Okay, very cool. So now I have access to my code. All right, friends, excellent. Let's answer these questions. The answers are here in this image for you, but we're going to choose indigo pink. You can choose whatever you want for your application. We want typography, and then we want animations. You know why? Because we want our application to be nice and smooth. All right, we're going to give this a chance to update. If you're just joining us, remember we're on adding material, which is Code Lab Step 3. Excellent. Now, there's one more step that we're going to do to save ourselves some time. Every time we want to add a new component from Angular material, we're going to have to import it into our ng modules. And we'll keep going back and forth, and this is going to be a little bit time consuming. So to smooth that out, I have a pre-built app.module.ts that I want you to copy over to your project. Let's do that now. Okay, excellent. So go to this URL on the screen, goo.gle/ng-module. I'll give you a second to type that in. You want to go to goo.gle/ng-module. Okay, once you get there, I'm going to show you what we need. So I'm going to open this up. So here's what we'll end up seeing. There's a gist with some code here. We're going to use this code for our application. All right, so we're going to copy this code. And then in our project, let's open up our project structure under source, app.module.ts. we're going to replace this entire thing. So let me close this for us. Okay, perfect. We're going to replace this entire file. We're going to take that out and replace it with the contents that you got from that URL. And then you're going to do a save. All right, so as you can see, it already has a bunch of the things that we need for our application already imported. That's going to save us a lot of time. Okay, friends, let's see if we can go back here. Okay. So that was our step tracker. We'll get that back in a second. No problem. All right, so now that we have our ng modules set up, what you're going to do next is go back to that one window where you had your development server running. And it probably crashed because we changed the ng module so significantly. Not the end of the world. We're just going to do a new ng serve, and that's going to restart our module. Now we're going to wait. I'll give you a chance to catch up to that as I try to go back in my browser window here. Here we go, perfect. Now we got our steps back. Okay, friends, perfect. So once this restarts, we should see a big difference in our application, right? Well, we'll see that in a second. We'll give this a chance to finish, but let me explain to you what we're doing with Angular Material. So Angular Material is a design system created by Google. And if you're familiar with any of the Google products, you've seen Angular Material in the wild. Now, Angular has first-class integration with material design. And there are two parts that we're going to use for our application. That's the Angular Material plugin, which provides some components, and then we'll use the component development kit, which provides cool functionality like drag and drop, accessibility, and much more. All right, our application is restarted. I'm going to go back to my app here, refresh. Everything looks the same because we still need to do something. We have to add in some material components. Let's do that step now. I'm going to open up app. A component.html. Now I use Command P to pop up this window quickly on Mac, and if you're on PC, you can do Control P. All right, friends, feels good. So I'm going to delete all the code from here, and then we want a material toolbar. All right, now remember, you can copy this step from Code Lab Step 3, but I want to keep going because we have some really cool stuff that we have to work out. On line 1, we have material toolbar. We set the color to primary. On line 2, we use the icon for the fire department icon, which is going to be a little flame. And then we have our Kanban fire text. Let's see how this looks in our application. Do you see this? Do you see this? This is looking good. I want you to do something for me real quick. I want you, if you can, put that hand right over that shoulder. Pat yourself on the back because you are straight up killing it, all right? You're doing so great. All right, so now we've added Angular Material to our application. Here's the next step. Well, we need to visualize our tasks. Okay, to visualize the task, we need to create a task component. Let's do that step together. So now we've already done this step, so we're going to visualize our task with the task component. All right, so we'll use an Angular CLI. Now go back to another window. Remember the window that you did, the ng add, that terminal window, you want to use that one again. Let me clear this so we can make sure we can see it. We'll do ng generate component, and we'll do task. All right, friends, looking good. This is going to create our HTML and our CSS and our TypeScript. But we need one more thing. Our components will represent a task. And our task is going to have some data because we're going to link to Firebase. A very common practice in Angular is to use interfaces to shape the data so we can define the properties for our data. So let's do that. I'll give you the command that we're going to use. Now here's the command. We're going to generate an interface. We do ng generate interface task / task. The first task is the folder that we want it in. So we want it in the same folder as our task component. And then the second one is the name of the interface. Excellent. Let's add our properties to this interface. Now in my editor, I'm going to command click and go directly to this file. We have three properties. We have ID. We're going to put a question mark because that's optional. Then we have a title. It's a type string. And then we do description. Type string. Excellent. So we'll save that. Now let's go over to our task component and make the changes that we need. I'll give you a second to type this in. And remember, don't forget that we're on Code Lab Step 4, where you can actually find this code if you need it. Give you a second to catch up. Okay, let's go. In our project, let's go to the task component.ts. We're going to make some changes here. We want this component to accept a task as an input so we can display it. And then we also want it to output an event containing a task for future operations. Here's how we do that. At the input step, number one import step, we'll bring in the input decorator, output decorator, and then the event emitter. The next thing we need to bring in, we need to import our task. And that's going to come from /task because it's in the same folder. Okay, excellent. Down in the body of our task component, let's set up our input and output. So you do @input for the decorator. We'll call this a task. It's of type task. And the default value we'll give it right now is just null. And then for our output, call this edit, and we'll set this equal to a new event emitter type task. Okay, perfect. So now our component is set up to take our input and give out our output. Go ahead and type that in. And if you need the code from the step, check Code Lab Step 4 or go to goo.gle visualizing tasks. That's what our URL on the site represents. Okay, our component class is set up, but let's go into our component itself. Inside the component itself, we do the task component template. That's the task component HTML. Right now it says task works, but that's not what we want. All right, you can copy this from the Code Lab. We have a material card which represents one of our tasks. Okay, so if the task exists, we'll render it. That's our ngIf. If you double click, we can call this function for edit. We do call the edit emit function. And then we're displaying the task title and the task description. Now, if we want to get this to be displayed on the screen, we have to make another change. So let's head over to our app.component.ts. app.component.ts. At the top, I want to import task. I want to import task from /task/task. Okay, excellent. Now we have our task imported, but we need to have some task data so we can show it on the screen. To do that, we're going to create a task array. We'll do to do going to be of type task array. It's going to be set equal to a new array here. Now, let's put some data in for our tasks. So I have my task data, which is going to be my description, my title. Now we have our task data. You can copy these two from the code lab. All right, friends, let's go into the component template so we can display the tasks. Now, I have this breadcrumb at the top of my application. I'm going to click here, and I can go straight to app.component.html. Excellent. Let's bring in the app task component. Now, I'll want one of these for every task in our to-do list. So let task of to-do, that's from our to-do list. That's going to repeat this for each one of these. But remember, our task has an input, so let's set our input using property binding with the square brackets. Well, that's the name of our input, and we'll say what the value is task. Hey, friends, we're now going to loop over our task array and then display one task per line. And you'll see that in our application. Oh, it's failed to compile. Let's see what that can mean. I'm going to go into my terminal and go to where my application is running. And it says null is not an assignable type of task. Well, this is a TypeScript change that I will need to make. So I'm going to go into this file. You see, I've given it the value of null, but I said, well, this thing can only really be a task. Let's make a change so it can support null as well. We'll use the union and say it can be task or it can be null. All right, I'll let you make that change. If you have that error, that's why you're getting that error. It should be task, union, null. And let's go back to the UI. Okay, I just need to know if your eyes are open and that you can see this magic that we got going on. This is because of material design. We're able to use material to get our cards and our title. This is looking really good. I'm super proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. This is a thumbs up I found in this for you. Okay, you can have it. That's for you. Okay, friends, so we visualized our tasks. Let's get into the next step and let's implement our drag and drop. I'll be completely honest with you. Whenever I think of drag and drop, I can only think of all the developer tears that I have shed over the years. And that's because drag and drop is really hard to do, but because we're using the component development kit, we can do the built-in functionality, and that's going to work in our favor, which is really, really, really exciting. Okay, let's get started with that. So in order to use the development kit, we'll need to import some things. And remember, we're on code lab step 5, so if you need to copy this code, go ahead and do that now. Okay, first things first. Let's go into our app.component.html. Brunky, there we go. All right, app.component.html. I know we just put this fancy app task here, but we're actually going to drop this. Now I want you to copy the code for these swim lanes because we're going to put those swim lanes in right now. Okay, friends, now I just dropped a lot of code on you, and you can copy this, but I want you to understand what we're doing. Let's head over to the slides because I have some helpful diagrams that should be supporting our task now. Okay, here's what's happening. At a high level, we have our container wrapper. That's at a high level. That's containing all of the swim lanes. Then inside, we have a smaller container with the div called container, and this is each individual swim lane. And that swim lane has an H2 for the title. Now, inside that smaller internal block, we'll have a material card. And inside the material card, we're going to have some attributes, some directives here. We have the CDK drop list. Then we have an ID. Then we have our to-do list, which is a template variable that we're using. That's what the hashtag means. And then we have this block of code, which is going to help us to really have our drag and drop working. So inside here, we have the drop list data. Well, what is the data supporting the swim lane? Well, that's our to-do from our component. Then you need to ask, well, where can I go next? Well, from the to-do, you can go to the done list or in progress list, okay? And then we have our CDK list dropped. All right, so this is the event that will be fired once you drop in a card into our swim lane. And from there, we display our task. All right, let's go back to the code so we can implement this functionality. All right, so we've dropped in our swim lanes. Okay, let's add in, let's go to app.component.ts, app.component.ts. I'm going to go back to that file. Well, we need some more stuff here. We need a to-do, we need our in progress, which is going to be the same type of array. It's going to be a type task, right? And then we'll do this, and then we'll have our done, which is going to be the same type of array, be our task, and then we'll do that. Excellent, friends. Okay, now we have that working, but we'll need to add some more code here. I'll let you type that in, but we'll need to add just a little bit more code. All right, we also need to import our drag and drop functionality. So we're going to import two things. We're going to import transfer array item, and we need one more thing, which is CDK drag drop. So we need those two things. Now, I don't want to spell this wrong. Let me make sure I got this right. CDK drag drop, and we'll get both of those from Angular CDK, and then we do drag drop. Okay, friends. Excellent. So I spelled that right. That's going to save us some heartache because now I don't have to worry about taking those errors down. All right. So then in the body, we added our swim lanes for in progress and done. So we've added those two steps. But now we need to add some functions. So to add our functions, we're going to go into the body here. We need our edit task. And you can copy this from the code lab. I encourage you to. And then we have another function that we have to add. Okay, this is our drop function. So what should happen when we do our drop? So I need to spell this properly. Okay, we got our IO drop. Okay, great. All right, here is our drop function. Let's break down what we have here. We have drop, which takes a task, right? A CDK drop event with the task, and then we check the event, and we have two guards here from 28 to 32 on the screen. This is preventing us from just making an illegal drop, right? If it's in the same container, we don't want to do anything, and if the data is not defined, we don't want to do anything. If this does work, what we expect to have is that we can transfer the data from one array to a different array. So we want to transfer from one lane to a different lane. Let's save this. All right, go ahead and copy and paste that code in there. It's a lot to type. All right, and let's make sure that we can move things around in our application. So if everything worked in our favor, I want to be able to click and drag. I wish you could see my face of just pure amazement at how cool you are. You just implemented drag and drop with a few lines of code. I have something. Where did I put that? Oh yeah, high five. That's for you. Way to be awesome. Okay, friends, let's keep this going. So now we have our drag and drop implemented. This is exciting. Now, there's a lot of code for this section, so definitely check out the code lab or the drag and drop link if you need to catch up. But we need to move on to creating some tasks because right now all of our tasks are hard-coded. So to start, we need to update our code to enable that. First thing we'll need is a button. So in app.component.html, I'm going to minimize our entire container wrapper. Okay, friends. Now, I'm going to wrap this with a new div. And that's why I minimized it to make this process a little bit easier for myself. So I'm going to wrap it with a new div. This entire container wrapper gets wrapped with a new div. Now, the class of that div is going to be content wrapper. So on the outside, we have content wrapper. On the inside, we have our container wrapper, which has our swim lanes. Let's add a button. And we'll say it's a matte button so we can get the material design. And we wanted to say add task. But I'm going to make this a little bit fancier. And I want an icon. So to add an icon, we do matte icon. Matte icon. Great. And the icon name that we want is add. Let me format this so it's more easily readable to our friends at home. Hope you're having a good time because I am having a blast. So we'll save that. Now, if we go to our application, we now have our add task button. But guess what? We need to do some magic here and make it work. Let's add our on-click handler. So we'll say click. Whenever you click this, we want a new task. But this new task doesn't exist yet. So we're going to have to add that functionality. I'll let you type all this stuff in now. Okay. Going back to app.component.ts. Then we're going to have our add task. So I'm just going to drop our new task function. All right, now this function needs some parts that we're going to bring in now. Okay, so when you click on a new task, when this function gets executed, what we want to happen is a new dialog to open. And then from there, enter the data and then come back and add it to the new swim lane. That's the task that we want to happen. Okay, now I know dialogues can seem hard, but we're going to use the CDK to help us out here. Let's make this possible. So at the top, we're going to import. We're going to import matte dialog. That's the material dialog service. And we're going to import this from Angular material dialog. Okay, so that gives us our dialog. However, we still are getting this error that it doesn't show up. That's because we need to define it in our constructor. So let's add our constructor for this. So we'll add a constructor. Now I'm putting it between our properties and then our function. Okay, we're going to have private, and then we'll call this dialog. And it's going to be the matte dialog. Excellent. So now our application is looking better, but we still have some errors because we need to create the task dialog component and this task dialog result. Now to create our component, let's make that happen together. Okay, so here's the step that we need to create our task dialog. Now let's go to our terminal again, ng generate component, and we do task dialog. Okay, friends, that's going to create the dialog, and then we're going to add some code in there. Okay, let yours complete. Okay, we have our task dialog component, and we still need our task dialog result. The Angular CLI created this component, so we're in a good place. Now, in our task dialog component, let's set up the code that we need for it to display. So I'm going to go directly to task dialog component.html, which is our template. Okay, so we brought in quite a bit of code. Okay, so this code that we can get, let's mark this as complete. If you need the code for this, this is in Code Lab Step 6. And right now we have our material form fields and some inputs. One cool thing that is worth taking note of is the CDK initial focus directive. This is going to allow, when this dialog opens, it'll get the initial focus. So we don't have to try to program that with JavaScript or anything like that, which is pretty great. All right, now that we have this code that we got from Code Lab Step 6, let's go into task dialog component.ts and let's make some changes here. Okay, first we need to import inject, the inject decorator. So let's do that. That's on line 1. Next, we need to have the mat dialog data token and the mat dialog reference. So let's import those two. We're going to get both of these from Angular/material, okay, /dialog. Okay, great. So we got both of those. Now we're going to update. I'm going to update my constructor here with the references to these things. Okay, excellent. So this constructor, you can pull this from Code Lab Step 6. All right, so we have our dialog reference, and then we have our data, our token for mat dialog data. All right, so for the next part, I definitely encourage you to copy this code because there's a lot of type, and I want you to avoid some typos. We need a backup task because what could happen is a user could open up the window, and then they could type it and then hit cancel. And so we need a backup task. So let's get our backup task. In TypeScript, partial means take a type and then set all the properties to optional. All right, so now we have our constructor. Finally, we need a cancel function. So what should happen if they go to create a component, create a task, but they don't want it, they're probably going to cancel. So let's make that cancel. Right. So now we are super duper close. You know what we're missing? I think we're missing our task import. So let's add the task import. So I'm gonna do a control space next to it and bring in my task. Let's see. Okay, very cool. So on line 3, I also imported my task. All right, friends, so we've done quite a bit of code here. I'm gonna keep going because we still have to implement our Firebase project and then moving it on to the internet. So we still need some types. So let's add some types that we talked about before. Okay, so we need our dialog type. Okay, perfect. So we need our dialog data interface, which has a type, and then if it should be able to be deleted, and then we have our dialog task result. Okay, now this code, again, I encourage you to copy it over so that we can get to, because there's a lot of errors and we can get through to the really cool stuff when we connect it to Firebase. All right, so let's check on our development server. If I go back to the console and check, oh wait, our components, our task dialog component is not there, and then our task dialog result is not there. And that's in app.component.ts. So let's head over to that file. I'm going to do an import for this. So I do control space right next to it to bring it in. And then, all right. Excellent, friends. Now it looks like we should be on the road. So our application is compiled successfully, which is doing what we want. Now let's check this out in the browser. What I want to be able to do is click here, get this. Okay, this is working the way that we'd hoped, which is excellent. Here's the new task. All right, because a high five is incoming. Excellent. This looks great. So now I have this task. You get your hand up, it's in progress. And then I drag it to done because There you go, another high five, phenomenal. So now we have new tasks we can drag and drop, and we have our dialogue. Now comes the fun part. Our application isn't looking especially like a Kanban board. Right now, our swim lanes are in a column, like vertically stacked. That's not what we want. So let's improve our app styles. So I'm going to do this step. I'm going to go to app.component.html. Sorry, not app.component.html. I want to go to app.component.css. That's where my styles live. Okay, so we have our app styles. Excellent. And then I'm going to go to the task. So let's go to task component. Okay, let's find it from our sidebar just to make sure we go to the right place. Okay, so I'm going to go to source app task.component.css. All right, do my IO task. All right, we saved those. You should copy these from Code Lab Step 7. All right. And now we have a nice looking application. Look at this. Sliding nice and smooth. Remember those animations that we asked for? Well, this is why. Because it's nice, smooth drop in. Excellent work, friends. This is going amazing. You're doing great. I'm so proud of you. All right. Now, for the next step, and for the sake of time, here's what we're going to do. Go to Code Lab, step number 9. Go ahead and create your Firebase project. Okay, go ahead and create your Firebase project. But I've already done that step, and I really want to show you how cool this is going to be when we get it onto the internet. So go ahead and do that step. While you're doing that, creating your Firebase project, we actually need to add Firebase to this project. And in order to make that happen, we'll do ng add Angular/Fire, and I'm going to do at latest because I'm on version 12 of Angular. Now let me show you the cool thing that's going to happen here. Because I've already set up my project, Angular Fire is going to install. So Angular Fire is our integration with Firebase. Firebase is a cloud-hosted database solution with lots of cool features. We're going to use 2 of these features today. We're going to use connecting the database to Angular Fire, to Firestore, and we're going to use the deployment feature to get our application onto the internet so all of our friends and loved ones can see how cool we actually are. So while this is running, if you type this in, go ahead and create your Firebase project because it's going to take a few seconds for the package to install. Now, if you have questions, definitely head over to the Q&A section of this workshop so that way our incredible team can support you. Now we're almost out of time together and I'm waiting for this to install. So when we add this, I'm going to start adding the code that we'll need so that way we can get our application running. First thing that we need to do in our component for app.component.html. I already know this because I've worked on this. Our content wrapper here that we have now, all of our code, we're going to switch to observables. Because we're going to use observables, we need to switch this. So I'm going to take this and delete it, and then I'm going to drop in a different one. So I'll do IO dash, okay. Oh, my application is crashing. Okay, that's why. All right. So we had a little bit of a crash when we were installing. We should be okay. Okay, now it's going to proceed. All right, friends, let's see if we can get this working for us. Okay, so we need to convert all of our tasks to be asynchronous. Next, in our application, here's what we'll end up having. Inside of the component.ts, we'll change all of our swim lanes. All of these will become okay, so we're out of time. Okay, friends, we're just about out of time and we're not going to be able to finish implementing our application, but that's okay. This application was built on a code lab. So you can go to the code lab and you can find all the steps to complete this. But friends, it's been so fun to hang out with you. I've really loved doing this workshop with you. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to the incredible teaching assistant team. You all are phenomenal. And until the next time, go build great apps and enjoy I/O.